Okay, we're back, everyone. So we're going to be continuing this study. So we're going to be going into this study now. Actually, whoops, let me go back here. I want to get back to the actual document. For some reason, it wasn't allowing me to go to the document I wanted to go to for some reason. Okay, why is on that? Oh, there we go. We are on the right thing. Okay, so Leviticus 23 in the Torah, hotspot for our Creator's set apart days. Sorry about that. Try to ignore that false terminology there. Sorry about that, everyone who's seeing the shared screen right now. Set apart days. Set apart days. Okay. So it makes sense to start there. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the people of Yisrael, saying, in the 7th month, so this is the 7th month of the scriptural calendar, on the 1st of the month you shall observe a day of solemn rest, meaning a Shabbat, or a Sabbath, a memorial proclaimed with the blast of trumpets, which that's literally what we said in what I just iterated in part 1. If you haven't seen part 1, please watch part 1 when it gets uploaded. Blast of trumpets, that's the literal definition of Teruah, meaning a clanging of trumpets, okay? A set-apart gathering, you shall not do any ordinary work, or probably more specifically should be servile work here. I don't know what translation they were using here, so 119 Ministries is where I'm gleaning from right now. They might have used a modern translation. It should say servile work, meaning servitude work. And you shall present a food offering to Yahuwah, which most older translations like the King James will say meat offering. Meat in the Old British means anything that's food, just to explain it to our viewers. They might have a different word in their Bible. So it's also found in Numbers 29, 1-6. On the 1st day of the 7th month, you shall have a set-apart gathering. You shall not do any ordinary work. It is a day for you to blow the trumpets. You shall offer a burnt offering for a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah, 1 bull from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without blemish. Also their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for the bull, 2/10 for the ram, and 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, with 1 male goat for a sin offering to make atonement for you, besides the burnt offering of the new moon and its grain offering, and the regular burnt offering and its grain offering, and their drink offering according to the rule for them, for a pleasing aroma, a food offering to Yahuwah. So that's Numbers chapter 29, verse 1-6. So it's talking about blowing of trumpets. We're commanded to blow trumpets. And so even over the offerings back in the Levitical priesthood, the priest would be blowing the trumpets over these offerings, and the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, so that's what that's saying there. And then it says Yom Teruah is the only appointed time that falls on the 1st day of the month, aka the new moon. So 1st day of the month, usually you don't have a appointed time on the 1st day of the month usually, but Yom Teruah is like the one exception where it's actually like a high appointed time. It's a high day because it falls on the new moon, aka the 1st of the month. All Moadim and new moons are to include a blasting of trumpets, and they give you the verse right here. Okay, so Numbers 10:10. On the day of your gladness, also at your appointed feasts and at the beginnings of your months, you shall blow trumpets. And actually, trumpets is not literally there. Well, actually, no, it is there. Where it's not literally there, let me actually go to that real quick, because I want to kind of explain this, because some people use this argument to say that it doesn't have to be a trumpet because it's not literally there. So we're going to actually read Numbers 10, 1-10 here and show you the context here. Says, and Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, make you 2 trumpets of silver. That's where you have the chatzosera there. So literally trumpets. Of a whole piece you shall make them, that you may use them for calling of the assembly and for journeying of the camps, and you shall sound with them. This is where it's not there. So I've seen other brothers and sisters do studies about this. And so this is where some Bibles will actually insert the word trumpet where it's not literally there. But as we just read, the context is you're making 2 silver trumpets to blow them as a commandment by the Father. So, I mean, they should have added trumpet in verse 3, but they were trying to take some liberties for context purposes, but it's still not right to add to his word. But so the context anyway is to blow trumpets. So you shouldn't need trumpet in verse 3 to understand that if you read the first 2 verses. And you shall sound with them, and all the congregation shall be gathered to the door of the tabernacle of witness. And if they shall sound with one, all the rulers, even the princes of Yashrael, shall come to you, and you shall sound an alarm. So that's probably where Teruah might be. Most likely in that verse. And the camps pitched eastward shall begin to move, and you shall sound a second alarm, and the camps pitched southward shall move, and you shall sound a third alarm, and the camps pitched westward shall move forward, and you shall sound a fourth alarm, and they that encamp toward the north shall move forward. They shall all sound an alarm at their departure. So basically, the trumpets are even for use to going out to war. There's a lot of different purposes for this commandment that Yahuwah is giving through Masha to Yashrael. So, and whenever you shall gather the assembly, so it's for gathering the assembly, not just for going out to war. Anytime we assemble, we come to one another, we congregate with one another like today, we are to sound with a silver trumpet. And when the priests, the sons of Aaron, shall sound with the trumpets, it shall be a perpetual ordinance for you throughout your generations. And most likely this is probably hinting to the burnt offerings that we just read about, Numbers 29. So this is probably what verse 8 is referring to with the priests, the sons of Aaron, the Levites, sounding with it. And it's a perpetual statute for throughout your generations, meaning like everlasting. And you shall go forth to war in your land against your enemies that are opposed to you, and then you shall sound with the trumpets, and you shall be had in remembrance before Yahuwah, and you shall be saved from your enemies. So, I mean, this is important, So Yahuwah's, saying, if you do this, what I'm telling you to do, you trust in me and obey what I'm telling you to do right now, I'm going to deliver you from your enemies when you blow the trumpet. And in the days of your gladness and in your feasts and in your new moons, you shall sound with the trumpet. So the appointed times, the Modim, this is where it's most important. This verse is for today. Okay. This verse really, really is pertinent to this study for today.
So it actually tells you to shout with the trumpets when you're going into battle. Mm-hmm. And really when they were moving camp, they also shouted with the trumpets. Only when you have an assembly do you just blow them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's different ways to blow the trumpet that they were, like Sister Shoshana was just saying, there's specific ways to blow the trumpet where it was more of a shout for war and more of a regular blowing for calling the assembly and for the appointed times, which are commonly called the feast days, and for the new moons. And even the Levites are, blowing it over the sacrifices when there was a Levitical priesthood. So there was many different applications to this commandment. So, and then you have the, it says, your whole burnt offerings and at your sacrifices, your peace offerings, and there shall be a memorial for you before your Elohim. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. So this is a direct commandment from the Father to Moshe to give to all 12 tribes. So, I mean, this is direct. So far, we're seeing a direct commandment of trumpets and not really much evidence for ram's horn. Just keep that in mind. So outside of the instructions solely for the Levites, we see that there is not a lot of detail prescribed in the observance of this day. Well, I would kind of disagree with them on that one, but anyway. because he's talking about the rest of the, it's not just saying Levites to blow the trumpets, so I would disagree with them on that. We are to rest and make a loud voice. That is about as simple as it gets. The appointed days exist to teach us about what the Messiah has done and or will do in the future. I definitely agree with that. Very important. There's not a lot to prophetically go on scripture as it relates to Yom Teruah, except that the word Teruah itself, so we will start here. Now, I would disagree with that because I think there's a lot. You have the day of Yahuwah, you have Yahusha's return, so I think there is a lot of prophetic significance. So I would actually disagree with them on that. Mindfully, we're not associated with 119 Ministries. We're using this as a template for our study, so just any of our subscribers that are listening in here, we're not affiliated with this ministry, so just keep that in mind. I'm just using this as a template here. That's all. The phrase translated to a blast of trumpets is from the word Teruah, which is where the name of this originates, meaning the name of this appointed day. Yom Teruah, or the day of shouting. And I would actually, in my personal opinion, from what I've seen from the Strongs, it should be translated in English, the day of shouting trumpets. That's what it should say, or clamoring trumpets. Teruah is translated as shouting, alarm of war, or battle cry, a blast for marching, or a shout of joy. Shouting in scripture is often correlated with joy and praise. And this is another thing I kind of altered a little bit because I've been checking into the Targums and stuff like that, the Aramaic versions of Psalms and the Pentateuch, the Torah. And it's interesting, Psalms 47:1 here, actually Yahuwah's name is supposed to be here, not Elohim or Al. It's actually supposed to say Yahuwah according to the Aramaic Targum of the book of Psalms. It says, clap your hands, all peoples, shout to Yahuwah with loud songs of joy. So the Aramaic Targum of Psalms, it translated into English, shows the substitution of capital L-O-R-D. And those of us that know about that substitution know that's actually a substitution for the Tetragrammaton. G-O-D is actually the substitution for Elohim. So the Aramaic Targum into English actually shows you that Yahuwah's name is supposed to be there in certain places. The Masoretic text doesn't show you, just to kind of give an explanation why I'm using the Aramaic versions here. Psalm 66 verse 1 says, shout for joy to Yahuwah, all the earth. And then we have here Psalms 81 verse 1. Sing aloud to Elohim, our strength. Shout for joy to the Elohim of Jacob. And now I'm going to go to Psalms 81. And because I also want to read a little bit more from this chapter that pertains to this day. Okay, so I'm going to be using the Aramaic Peshitta version of the book of Psalms, which is a little bit later manuscript than the Targum, but it's still pretty accurate. So here we go. It says in verse 1, praise Elohim, our champion, and cry to the Elohim of Jacob. That's interesting. Take tambourines and lyres and those pleasant on harps. Wow. Verse 3, call with the trumpets at the first of the month, or the new moon, and at the full moon on feast days. So you break that verse down, means call with trumpets on the new moon, the first of the month, and so you're also supposed to call with trumpets at the feast days, which usually occur on full moons other than today. Usually, like for example, I've heard that Tabernacles usually occurs on the full moon. And Sister Shoshana, I see you might have something to add. Go ahead if you have.
I just want to read what mine says with a little bit of editing from me, because I grabbed some from the Septuagint and some from the Aramaic and put it together. Call with the trumpets at the time of the new moon, which this is Yom Teruah, and at the full moon on our festival days. For this is a law for Yisrael and a right ruling of the Elohim of Yahweh.
Yep, I like that. So Psalms 81 verse 3 shows a separation between what the full moon appears on and what the new moon appears on, which that's a whole nother study we might get to in the future and break that verse down so people can get in our opinion, the correct interpretation of that verse. But I think we'll continue. Yep, go ahead.
The full moon is actually the first day of first Yom of Sukkot.
Oh, that's cool.
The bright full moon, and it helps you see how to build your tabernacle on that first day.
That makes sense. That's definitely that is brilliance by our Abba there to give us. So we have a full moon that gives us more than enough light to see to build our temporary dwellings, and that makes perfect sense. So Psalms 100 verse 1, and it says, "Make a joyful noise to Yahuwah, all the earth." Here are some interesting verses containing the Hebrew word Teruah or Teruah. Okay, so Numbers 10:5, which we kind of already read, so this is kind of like a little bit of review here. "When you blow an alarm, the camps that are on the east side shall set out." Numbers 23 verse 21, "He has not beheld I guess this would be, he has not beheld tube in Jacob." I'm going to try to not say fortune here. Or has not beheld favor in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Yashrael. Yahuwah their Elohim is with them, and the shout of a king is among them. Okay, so that was Numbers 23:21. And 1 Samuel 4:5. "As soon as the ark of the covenant of Yahuwah came into the camp, all Yashrael gave a mighty shout so that the earth resounded." Wow. I can only imagine what that must have been like. Wow. Job 33:26. Now, the reason I'm using the Septuagint version here is because in your Masoretic text Bibles, it will say Elohim there, like the substitution God. So in the Septuagint, it actually shows the Greek word kurios there, capital L, lowercase o, R-D, which obviously is the substitution of the Tetragrammaton. So that's why I'm using the Septuagint in this particular verse, because it honors the Father's name a little bit better, or it shows you that the Father's name should be there. Then man prays to Yahuwah, and he accepts him. He sees his face with a shout of joy, and he restores to man his righteousness. Okay, so shouting. So he restores, and he sees his face with a shout of joy. Wow. Shouting, trumpet, alarm, all means of making a loud noise for various purposes. So Yom Teruah contains not only shouting of his people, but trumpets as well. We also saw such activity at Jericho. And in the context of the day of Yahuwah at our Messiah's return, we find an interesting verse which also reminds us of Jericho. Okay, so it says, Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 6, "A day of trumpet blast and battle cry against the fortified cities, against the lofty battlements." So continue to keep this theme of shouting, blowing trumpets, joy, and the start of war in mind as we consider the prophetic implications of this day later in the message. I'm going to change this to message. I don't like the word teaching. That's just a little pet peeve of mine. If you recall, Jericho contained a moment of shouting by the people. This was prefaced by sound of, it's not a ram's horn. It's actually cornet. Not ram's horn. Okay. Cornet or trumpet. "And when they make a long blast with the cornet, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout." And they put in parentheses Teruah, because that's the Hebrew of a great shout. "And the wall," so that's Yahushua chapter 6, verse 5. "And when they make a long blast with the cornet, And when you hear the sound of the trumpet, so that's chatzorah right there. So you have shofar being mentioned in the first part, and then chatzorah. Then all the people shall shout with a great shout, Teruah. The wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, everyone straight before him. Okay, so it says in Leviticus 23:24, Yom Teruah is also referred to as Zikron Teruah. The word Zikron sometimes translated as memorial or remembrance, often in reference to speaking the name of Yahuwah. Now that's interesting. For example, Exodus chapter 3, verse 15. So we could go there real quick. Exodus chapter 3, verse 15. Okay. Let's see here. Let me make sure it's actually share screen, because I know my video likes to mess around on Zoom. Sometimes it'll mess up on share screen. All right, here we go. So we're going to go here, and it says, and Yahuwah said moreover unto Masha, thus shall you say unto the children of Yashrael, Yahuwah Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Yaakov has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. So, and I know people are reading, they're looking at the share screen, probably wondering why I didn't read what it actually says there, Elohim, because actually in the Aramaic shows in the Pentateuch, there's certain places where Yahuwah's name should be that the Masoretic doesn't have it. And actually it's supposed to be, and Yahuwah sent him over to Masha, not and Elohim. So just giving a little explanation there. And of course my shared screen is messing up again. Why are you doing this? Okay, so that Elohim should actually be Yahuwah according to the Aramaic Targum of the Pentateuch. So now I'm going to go back to the study here. I'm not trying to go too much on a rabbit trail. So the other examples of shouting, referring to speaking Yahuwah's name, you have Isaiah 12:4, Isaiah 26:13, and Psalms 45:18. So we have, see what Isaiah 12:4 says. Okay, and in that day shall you say, praise Yahuwah, call upon his name, declare his doings among the people, make mention that his name is exalted. So for people out there, there is importance to calling upon the Father's name. Just saying, there is importance there. Don't try to downgrade the importance of the pronunciation of his name. Just saying. Okay, and then we got, I don't know if Shoshana, did you want to add anything? I thought I might have seen you you were trying to say something. Shoshana, you're muted. I'm trying to unmute you, but.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to stay muted because my dogs are making noise. But anytime you shout with the trumpet, it's like an occasion where you have to do something. You have to, in the old days, the Israelites had to get up and move, tribe by tribe. Well, then there was war, which you really shouted. And I think that today we should be shouting with the trumpets even louder, because we are at war with the people running this world, because they're trying to kill everybody off and treat us like chattel. So that's not my opinion. That is everything that I read today. And we should be asking for Yahuwah to help us, because he is our only source of help.
Yep, agreed. This is the day that we should be happy. We should be glad. These are one of the appointed times where, this and tabernacles are like those two appointed times where we should be extremely happy. That's how I feel. I feel like this is foreshadowing. Still shadows there. So I know Christians that like to quote Colossians 2, say they were shadows. No. Present tense, they are shadows. Okay? And the shadows are not done away with, okay? Shadows are still pointing to him. There's still going to be shadows in the millennial. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news. If you don't like the shadows, you're not going to like the millennium reign. So, yeah. Anyway, Isaiah chapter 26:13. All right, I'm going to keep reading here. We're going to go more into verses that talk about.
If you remember my song, it was about the day of Yahuwah. And the day of Yahuwah is when Yahuwah comes after the wicked. And all of his Kadesh people who have been resurrected and the Kadesh Malachim will come with him and absolutely burn this earth to get the wicked off of it. And it will be cleansed for the righteous to take over in the millennium. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's an exciting day. I mean, it's a terrible day when it's happening. It's like you're going to see, the elements heating up and what Peter talks about. I mean, it's going to be very scary. Even for believers, it's going to be kind of scary because you're seeing, people that, that are witnessing it. It's going to look very scary, and especially the wicked are going to be terrified. As they're being destroyed, they're seeing, destruction coming from the heavens. So, I mean, I can only imagine how terrified they're going to be. So, yeah, it's not the day that Christianity likes to put it as, the day of his return. They like to kind of candy coat it a little bit. And so I don't want to lead anyone astray that's listening to this and viewing this and, is a new believer. The day of Yahuwah is a terrible day. He says it himself. It's a terrible, dreadful day. So, we better be making sure we're, getting right with him every day. We're trying to be more obedient every day because, he says about people that sin and sin willfully in context, who are you that welcome the day of Yahuwah? Don't you know it's a day of disaster and all that? So don't get too comfortable.
Read this in Malachi 4 and in Joel 2. It's very plain what happens on that day. Malachi 4 says, "For look, the day shall come burning like a furnace, and all the proud and every wicked one shall be stubble. And the day that shall come shall burn them up, says Yahuwah of armies, which leaves to them neither root nor branch. But to you who," I wrote something in here, who revere my name, "the brilliance of righteousness shall arise with healing in its wings, and you shall go out and leap for joy like calves from the stall." So it's not all bad. For the righteous, it ends in a good time, but for the wicked, it is not a good time.
Yep. So that was Malachi chapter 4, verses 1 to 2. Another interesting difference with the Septuagint is instead of armies, it says almighty, so that's kind of cool. So that's kind of interesting difference there, but you kind of get the same idea. Basically, the wicked are going to be destroyed. They're going to be the ones that shouldn't be welcoming it and saying, "Oh, we're happy it's coming," And so let's see here. So let's get we went on not really a rabbit trail because it has to do with this study. Later on, we'll get to 1 Thessalonians 4 that directly deals with his return. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 13 says, so we're going to go there, which talks more about praising his name. Okay, so Isaiah 26:13 says, "O Yahuwah, our Elohim, take possession of us. O Yahuwah, we know not any other besides you." We name your name. Wow, that's interesting. Hold on. Let me try this. Let me see if there's another version I can try here, because that's a little weird phrase there. We name your name. Make mention of your name. No, there's got to be a stronger version than that. Okay, mention of your name. All right. So we name your name or make mention of your name. Okay. Basically, I think in context, talking about praising and exalting his name, I would think. It's just worded a little weird in the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. Psalms 45 verse 18 is the last one that we have, talking about praising his name, shouting connected to praising and exalting the Father's name. So Psalms 45:18, and I think that might have been in the Aramaic, if I'm not mistaken, because I think it's verse 17 in the it's verse 17 in the Masoretic text in the Septuagint. It says, I will make your name to be remembered in all generations, therefore shall the people praise you forever and ever. Now, actually, let me see. I think I wrote down what the Aramaic says versus that. Has a little bit more, so I just want to read that real quick because it's pretty important, I think. It says, it says, Psalms 45:18 of the Aramaic Targum says, the Gentiles will praise you forever and ever. Praise your name forever and ever. So I like that a little bit better. The Gentiles will praise your name forever and ever instead of make your name be remembered. I like the Aramaic a little bit better in my opinion, but anyway. The day of Zikron, Teruah, the memorial, we are to remember, memorialize something prophetically. Yom Teruah is often associated or linked with the return of our Messiah. Some reasoning is found in 1 Thessalonians. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 16 to 18. I really like the way it reads in the Restored Name King James, because it's the only version I've seen so far where they actually put Yahushua's name, where most will just say the Master, generally. Just use a title referring to the Messiah. For Yahushua himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of Yahuwah, and the dead in the Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Master in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Master. Wherefore, comfort one another with these words. So it's basically talking about what in Greek is known as the erpazo, being the catching away, which is misinterpreted in Christianity as the rapture. And you have to understand the context of this, that he's talking about we who are alive and remain, meaning left over from the tribulation. So Paul's not saying you're going to get caught away before the tribulation happens, okay? So this is actually referring to the day of Yahuwah, the first resurrection here, the return of Messiah. Okay, so Matthew 24, verses 29 to 31 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be dark and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. The sign of the Son of Man, or the Ben Ha-Adam, okay, will appear in heaven. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, with power and great esteem. And he will send his angels, or malachim, with a great sound of a trumpet. There you go again. They will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other. When the Messiah comes, there will be a shout and a trumpet. There will be great joy in those who believe. And the Messiah declares war and judgment on the nations. These are things that prophetically link to this particular appointed day. Traditionally, Yom Teruah begins, I don't care about tradition. Sorry about that. These 10 days are ones of great introspection and heart. Okay, this is where he starts talking about, in their opinion, that it's a day of repentance. All right, let me get rid of that. Here's another portion of prophecy related to the beginning of the day of Yahuwah when our Messiah returns. Okay, so it says Joel chapter 2, verses 1 to 17. Which says, blow a trumpet in Zion, sound an alarm on my set-apart mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahuwah is coming. It is near, the day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness. Like blackness there is spread upon the mountains a great powerful people there like has never been before, nor will be again after them through the years of all generations. Fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land is like the Garden of Eden before them, but behind them a desolate wilderness, and nothing escapes them. Their appearance is like the appearance of horses, and like war horses they run. As with the rumbling of chariots, they leap on the tops of mountains, like the crackling of a flame of fire devouring the stubble, like a powerful army drawn up for battle. Before them, peoples are in anguish, all faces grow pale. Like warriors they charge, like soldiers they scale the wall. They march each on his way, they do not swerve from their paths. They do not jostle one another, each marches in his own path. They burst through the weapons and are not halted. They leap upon the city, they run upon the walls, they climb up in the houses. They enter through the windows like a thief. The earth quakes before them, the heavens tremble, the sun and moon are darkened, and the stars withdraw their shining. Yahuwah utters his voice before his army, for his camp is exceedingly great. He executes his word is powerful. For the day of Yahuwah is great and very awesome. Who can endure it? Okay, so yet even now declares Yahuwah, return to me with all your heart, with fasting and weeping and with mourning, and rend your hearts and not your garments. Return to Yahuwah your Elohim, for he is merciful and favorable, or he shows favor and is merciful, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, and he relents over disaster. Who knows whether he will not turn and relent and leave a baraka behind him, and a grain offering and a drink offering for Yahuwah your Elohim. Blow the trumpet in Zion, set apart a fast, all a solemn assembly, gather the people, set apart the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, even nursing infants. Let the bridegroom leave his room, and the bride her chamber between the vegetable and the altar. Let the priests, the ministers of Yahuwah, weep and say, spare your people, O Yahuwah, make not your heritage a reproach, a byword among the nations. Why should they say among the peoples, where is their Elohim? In the Torah, the months are numbered as first month, second month, third month. Numbers 28. Okay, so now they're getting into the number of the months. Let me just see here if there's any more trumpets references here. So we got Leviticus 25, verse 9. Then you shall cause the trumpet of the Yobel, or Jubilee, to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. On the Day of Atonement, you shall make the trumpet to sound throughout all your land. Now that's interesting. So Yahuwah also commands us to blow our trumpets on the Day of Atonement. Very interesting. So, and let me just see here. We already, Leviticus 23:23. We got less than a minute. We'll probably just do a very short part 3, very short one. But we're almost done with the study, so please stay tuned. Shalom, y'all. Thank you for joining us. Shalom.